Joining us tonight on the program here in the studio with us, Mr. Seshadri Chari, veteran leader of the BJP and strategic affairs analyst, former diplomat, Ambassador K.C. Singh joining us. We have two Skype guests tonight, Rupa Subramanya, columnist and economist, joining us from Canada tonight, and Sadanand Dhume, resident fellow with the American Enterprise Institute, is joining us from Washington, D.C. Let me take my first question to you, actually, Mr. Chari. Spectacle or substance or both? How do you see this visit going down?
No, more of substance and less of spectacle. See, Trump has to win his election back home. So he requires the NRI, he requires to present to the whole of his constituency that, look, I am cozying up with India. We are not, trade with China is going nowhere because of all this virus and this and that and all that. So we need a good partner, trade partner. So he is cozying up to all that. And then there is also the question of strategic partnership, defense partnership. So he has to sell his defense whereabouts. That's where he is going to come, and we are going to please him with the $2.6 billion deal on defense. But so this is the spectacle part of it. But spectacle part of it also includes strategy and also strategic partnership with the US, which has been there on the card for a long, long time.
So you're saying the spectacle is important. It's an important element of foreign policy now?
It was always an important element of foreign policy. But the personal equation between the two, the president and the prime minister, also becomes very important for both. See, Trump in his own way, Trump is more important than the party as far as the US is concerned. The Republicans have no choice. And Trump has no major competitor
at the moment,
as far as Democrats are concerned. So Trump's winning is almost sure, but he doesn't want it to be a cliff-hanging winning, which he did last time with
So, but interesting
Clinton.
How you say that you see political reasons domestically as perhaps being the reason why he was so keen to undertake this visit. Ambassador K.C. Singh, what do you think? I mean, you can see there that Trump firstly right now seems to be really hung up on this whole 7 million people are going to be there to welcome me from the airport to the Motera Stadium in Ahmedabad. He's clearly very touchy about crowd sizes after his inauguration. But do you get a sense that that's going to overtake the talks the next day in Delhi?
Look, you have to play to what is important for Mr. Trump. Idea is to not have him damage any part of the relationship, because, you know, with him, unlike with President Obama and President Bush, the strategic does not trump the transactional. With him, the transactional is sometimes as important, but you have to see what is important for him. He's coming after an impeachment thing. He's managed to get away because of the majority in the Senate, but nevertheless, the cloud hangs over him. Although Democrats at the moment may not have someone who seems to be able to take them, but the way Bloomberg has gone up, and he's gone up very rapidly in the last 3-4 weeks, and he's the one person who tends to get under President Trump's skin, because they're both from New York. Bloomberg is a genuine billionaire worth $50-60 billion, and I think President Trump doesn't want Bloomberg. So be that as it may, it's extremely important for him to have this spectacle, and let's give it to him. There's nothing wrong with that. This is not the first time we've done it. Right from 50s, whenever the Soviet leaders came, we would line up the streets with people. So this is not going to be the first or the last time. So give him the spectacle which he wants, but let's not be mistaken that the spectacle alone will work, because he needs something to take back to his voters, to people in swing states, Wisconsin and so on and so forth. So some things we'll have to do, even if you don't have a full-fledged trade deal. I have a suspicion that some kind of handouts will have to be there on Harley Davidson, maybe something on dairy. We're already importing dairy. There's been talk of chicken legs. You know, some takeaways which he can go and then show in America that he's done it. In any case, the trade imbalance with India has been coming down. It was $30 billion in 2014. It's 25 today. We are able to buy more oil and gas from them because they're exporting it. So much of that is really in his mind, because, you know, he is just committed to what he thinks should be completely balanced trade with each country, which is now not how it happens. But you don't argue with him. So what you do is you play him along, which is, I think, what India is doing.
Well, Rupa Subramanya, you've actually argued in a piece that, you know, especially on trade, that we are not on an equal footing with the US, and that we are actually at a huge disadvantage in terms of how we are negotiating with the Trump administration. How much of a setback do you think it is, if you think that we're not going to have a big trade deal announced now in a few days?
Thank you, Nidhi, for having me. To answer your question, first, I think this is more of a spectacle. There's very little substance to this visit. The absence of a trade deal is the main story, quite apart from the fact that a defense deal is expected to be signed. And the fact that we're not able to sign a trade deal, it's not even a major trade deal, it's not even a comprehensive trade deal, it's a mini trade deal, which basically is hinged on the GSP access that India enjoyed for many years, for that to be restored. So it's not even really a comprehensive trade deal, and if we cannot even get that going, then it suggests that's a huge setback for India, where India at the moment finds itself in a major slowdown. For us not to have access to the US market, preferential access to the US market, is not good for the country. It's not good for the economy. The Indian officials have tried to downplay revoking of the GSP. Their initial reactions were to be dismissive, and they said it was irrelevant, and then they made an about face because they realized, reality hit them, that they needed this more than they realized. So I think the fact that Indian officials have dithered on the GSP issue principally, and the fact that US officials have taken note of this is not good for India, and the fact that the USTR Robert Lighthizer has canceled his scheduled visit to India to coincide with Trump's upcoming visit is also not good optics. So my sense is, what I think is that the absence of a trade deal is the main story here.
Interesting. Before I come back to you, Mr. Chari, I wanted to get Sadanand Dhume's initial comments on that, because Sadanand Dhume is part of the problem, especially when it comes to India-US relations, that especially after the landmark nuclear deal, which happened more than a decade ago, that we've all come to expect these kind of big ticket announcements when presidential visits happen. And, is that necessarily the right expectation to have? Indian officials keep saying that, we are just reinforcing our relationship. But Rupa Subramanya has, I think, a bigger point to make, which is that you can see that the relationship has frayed somewhat in recent times. Sadanand Dhume.
So I have a somewhat different take. I mean, I completely agree with Rupa on the question of GSP, where I think that Indian trade negotiation officials were really quite cavalier, right? And they've hurt businesses, they've hurt livelihoods by taking a cavalier approach to that particular thing. But if I want to step back a little bit and look at the larger context of US-India relations, I think what you're seeing essentially is a kind of rebalancing, where a few years ago you could say that the relationship had three major legs. You had defense and security, you had trade, and then you had the values part, right? People talking about democracy, shared belief in human rights, and so on. And what we've seen over the last few years, both because of the Trump administration and because of the Modi government, frankly, is that the defense and security leg has really become the central pillar of this relationship. Trade has increased, in fact, right? It's more than $140 billion now. It was only $100 billion just a few years ago. But trade has increased along with trade frictions increasing and the approach of the U.S. changing much more. They're much more obsessed with, the idea of deficits rather than the previous approach, which was to just grow the trade relationship. And the democracy and values part actually is a problematic element, partly because of what the Modi government has been doing both in Kashmir and with the citizenship law. It may not affect Donald Trump directly because this is not an issue that he cares about terribly, but it certainly affects the US-India relationship because this is something that members of Congress do care about quite a lot. So that's...
Yes. In fact, Sadanand Dhume, you're right, because just today, and I'll bring this to Ambassador K.C. Singh first, just today there are two Congressman Ami Bera, you know, he's a senior U.S. congressman of the Democratic Party, the head of an important subcommittee in the Foreign Affairs subcommittee in the U.S. Congress, and a Republican, George Holding, who is the co-chair of the India caucus. Now, both of them are here, Ambassador Singh, in India, and they met some of us in the media this evening, and they said in their joint briefing that they, you know, expressed concerns about the continued detentions of political leaders in Kashmir, that they want to see an early return to normalcy in Kashmir, which would be good for India, that the Citizenship Act, Ami Bera particularly pointed to that as an issue of concern, that, you know, I'm proud India is a secular democracy, etc. Now, it's interesting because, as Sadanand points out, it may not be something that is sort of jumps out at Donald Trump personally, but for India, it is the bipartisan support in the US Congress that also matters very much.
No, which is true. We also saw the fracas when External Affairs Minister Jaishankar was there, and he had to call off a meeting with the Congressional Foreign Affairs Committee because he said there was somebody present in that, something like what we'd done to the British MP. You know, we are taking this aggressive stance, and I think that's fed by the confidence that President Trump is uninterested in these subjects. You've seen what he's done in the Middle East. He's gone and completely put a rubber stamp on the Israeli plan, which will have long-term implications. But as far as Netanyahu, before his election is concerned, he's gone and completely sided with the Israelis and the right wing in Israel. So this is Trump. That is of no interest to him, what is happening anywhere else. But that is of interest to the Congress, and that would be of interest to the Democrats. Therefore, we should not think that because he's definitely going to win, he will come back and this will have no effect. That may not be good diplomacy, but it would help the government here if President Trump comes here and says nothing in public. Though I have a suspicion he may yet say something because he needs Pakistan. That a peace deal in Afghanistan is signed but not implemented. Pakistan has been given an out. In the FATF, Pakistan, US has resumed their military training. So Pakistan has some cards which it is playing with. And I think on that, Trump may be sensitive. But he's not sensitive on the human rights, on democracy, on these things he's not. And therefore the government in the short run here.
The State Department has regularly made statements even on Kashmir and the Citizenship Act. In fact, even after the US envoy went to the Kashmir Valley with other envoys, the very next day the State Department continued to express concerns about the situation, particularly with regard to detentions and the internet lockdown. But I want to ask Mr. Chari that does it concern you at all about how India is being viewed as a democracy today, particularly in the US Congress? Or in fact, George Holding, the Republican today, was trying to emphasize, despite all this, that there's still a lot of support for India in the US Congress. And are you hopeful that that would continue despite all these controversies?
You know, we have been very good at balancing these things, and we have held our ground as far as international geopolitical issues are also concerned, where, like Trump, as K.C. Singh very rightly pointed out, he went out and supported Israel, but we have not been on the same page with him, and we have stood our ground as far as Palestine is concerned. So we have not accepted the US position as far as Israeli capital movement also, from Tel Aviv to this thing. Similarly, even on the case of US sanctions on Iran, we have stood our ground. As far as S-400 from Russia is concerned, we have stood our ground. As far as Article 370 is concerned, we have stood our ground, saying that it's an internal matter, it's a domestic matter. So we have conveyed our concerns as far as all these matters are concerned. Now, Trump is also wanting, I mean, it's very true that he requires Pakistan as far as quitting Afghanistan is concerned. He has to quit Afghanistan. He has to at least make a promise that he is quitting. He has to make a promise that I am getting all my boys back home and no more body bags. Because this is going to be a huge election issue as far as body bags are concerned, as far as the electorate, his own particular electorate is concerned. They are not concerned about other issues. As far as economy is concerned, Trump has to play his card very well as far as economy is concerned. But I think that is the place. I am not concerned about other issues as much as I am concerned about trade issues. And I think that is the place where we have to play our cards very carefully, because if you see, the countervailing duty has been, we have been removed from the list of CVD.
Yeah.
But the carrot that has been dangled before us is like India and China both are high income countries, high income group countries, because we crossed the threshold of 0.5% export of
Not
world
high income.
export. High income.
You said that they're no longer developing.
Yeah, we're
It's
developed
not-
countries now, which
We
is
are
not a good
developed-
thing actually
we
for
are
us.
developed
Yeah,
countries.
yeah.
As far as the World Bank
Yeah.
report is
But that
concerned.
denies us
Fine.
certain trade benefits.
But
Important
also
benefits.
I mean we made something like $240 million as far as our duty concession is concerned. That 2% duty concession in this thing. So we are losing out on GSP. Now we have to see whether patting ourselves on the back that we are a developed country is good enough to lose 240-50
Exactly.
million
Exactly.
dollars. So this is
That's what you need to work on.
And,
Yeah.
and I think as Rupa mentioned, I don't think Robert has cancelled his visit. He has not cancelled. He has just put off his visit. He was not going to travel along with Trump in any case. I think we will have to deal with Trump separately. We will have to deal with USTR separately. And I'm
There's a
sure
bigger
we will
point
be
you
able to
raise
deal
here.
with USTR.
There's another bigger point you raise here that, and I want to ask Rupa Subramania about that. The fact that our own growth has slowed down, our economy here in India is in trouble. How much of a factor is that then, in terms of how you leverage with a man like Trump and how you're able to negotiate with him?
Well, that's the crux of the matter, isn't it? That's the meat of the issue here. The fact is that we have very little in terms of bargaining clout with the world's with the world's most powerful country and the world's largest economy. What exactly does India have to offer? And this is where the China example is relevant. Trump has to deal with China whether he likes it or not. But as far as the U.S.-India trade relationship is concerned, India needs the U.S. more than the U.S. needs India. If you look at the trading relationship, India accounts for a minuscule percentage of U.S. exports and imports, whereas for India, it's the reverse. The U.S. is India's largest. In terms of exports, the U.S. is a very large export market. So when you have a situation such as this, where India's preferential access to the U.S. has been revoked, and that the countervailing duties, where it's been classified as a developed economy, and it's actually quite funny that several members of the BJP ecosystem think that that's a good thing when it's not. It deals a double blow to an already sputtering economy. These are not good, and like I said, the relationship is unequal, largely because India at this moment, India needs the U.S. more than the U.S. needs India as far as the trade relationship is concerned.
Mr. Chari has a quick intervention there.
But it's
Rupa
true.
has-
There is a point
right.
in it. There is a point in it. Nobody is going to. I said it in so many words that we don't want to pat ourselves on the back
Yeah.
as far as CVD is concerned, but we are more concerned about the 2% loss that we are going to counter. But that besides the point. See, the U.S.-China trade pact, that was only called as a first phase. That is not going anywhere because of the Chinese effect, the virus effect on Chinese economy. And Chinese economy is not going to really make a turnaround in, say, next 6-7 months or 8 months or 10 months or probably even a year. Most of the ports, Chinese ports are shut. Most of the Chinese products are being called off. So this is an opportune moment for India. It's more than what Trump can give India. What it is for the finance ministry, trade, commerce ministry in India to sit and
See what we can give
rethink.
the,
Probably we will have to revisit our budget 2020 also. We'll have to look into all the factors that is going to really improve our economy, improve our manufacturing, improve our capital structure, improve the tax structure. These things are all what we have to do. We cannot depend only on what USTR is going to give us.
Last quick word to you, Sadanand. We were talking about spectacle, substance, etc. And, I swear this happened in a briefing that I attended today where an official was asked whether President Trump and Prime Minister Modi would do the dandiya, and he did seriously answer that we do not know if they will do the dandiya, so they just might do that. But how much?
Dokla he will.
Well, we smile about it and we laugh about it, but with a man like Donald Trump, does the spectacle actually become the substance too? Quick,
well,
30 seconds.
I can't wait to see all the internet memes of Modi and Trump doing the dandiya. So I hope that actually comes to pass. But on a more serious note, I think spectacle in the times we live in is an essential part of diplomacy. And it's true that some of us, get into the weeds and how much we get into like the minutiae of trade, and we get into the minutiae of all kinds of other agreements. But the truth is that we live in an era where democracy is increasingly inflected with populism. Spectacle is a large part of that. It is naturally going to be a part of foreign policy too, and we should just accept that.
Yeah, well, I think we already have. We've seen a lot of it for the last few years, and it is continuing. Thank you very much to all of you for joining us tonight. I hope to see all of you again over the next few days and next week when the President does come visiting. Thanks for watching tonight. Goodbye.